Hi, my name is Sheila Corona, and this is my housemate, Lisa Flamino Rush. And this is a Conscious Conversation Presents. And we're going to do part two of Lisa's experience, um, which for us was more than a week ago, but I'm going to be releasing those two videos at the same time.
Okay.
And so, really, and we're going to be doing this is a multi-part series. I think it will probably continue conscious perspectives on disease and illness, because there's so much more. Well, there's so much more to life in general, period, than we've ever allowed ourselves to believe, but in
Yeah,
this arena for sure. And
it's an ongoing conversation.
it really is. And
Mhm.
Lisa has been really in the last year through quite a bit, and you have a lot to share with us. So we're going to get right to it. This will be seen on both Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love. So be sure to be signed up to get the notifications for both channels, because you never know which channel we might go live on, and we might go live at any time. So, Lisa, if you'd like to start, I know that we kind of ended our last one with kind of the setup for what actually when you really started noticing some things. And did we cover your guidance doing guiding you through the
The fall.
fasting and whatnot?
Yeah, I think we did. I think it kind of ended there.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I thought.
yeah, and I felt pretty good after the fast. And I say pretty good because
It was almost a full year later when everything started.
broke off. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that because I remember thinking, oh, I should be more energetic, and I kept thinking I could have felt better than what I did. I was surprised that I didn't feel transformed at the end of it. But I certainly felt better than I did going in, a whole lot better. And I was very careful how my diet changed forevermore after that. Like it to this day has never reverted back to any of those habits that got me um, into the most trouble, let's say, like sugar was dropped before then, but since then, even I've been hyper vigilant. Like I used to allow, like I certainly wouldn't eat anything that was, considered a sweet treat that was made traditionally. So I was using sweeteners, but things like maple syrup and honey and the like, date sugar, coconut sugar, those kind of sugars, I would participate in, and follow that advice of very little, and sparingly throughout. But post cleanse or fasting, I was hyper vigilant to start looking at labels of maybe sauces or spices, things that I hadn't really rooted out because it was in such tiny doses. I kind of wrote it off as no big deal. But after the cleanse, I really took it seriously to take that into consideration too. And I stopped using salad dressings. You might remember that, Sheila. I
I do.
said, oh, my favorite
You were
dressing is lemon
spraying.
juice.
Yeah, we fixed up a little tiny glass bottle for you to use with
Uh-huh.
lemon juice, and that's what you were using as
Yeah.
a
And a
salad.
little salt and pepper. And oh my goodness, that would just excite my whole body. So yeah, I started to really get serious about monitoring everything going into my mouth. So I continued that. I was taking my aminos. I was, really focused on what else can I do to nourish my body because I was moving into now that, I've cleansed. Um, it's time to rebuild, is what my guidance was showing me. And so I did. I spent that year researching and looking into nutrients and like the best way to get them. And so I was doing things like the shakes. We were finding those protein shakes, really clean. I was really paying attention now to not only like sugars on the labels, but also things like how, especially when it comes to animal products, how the animal was raised, what their diet entailed. Like I was really diving deep into sort of the nutritional aspects of feeding my body.
Right.
And so that's what I was doing, um, you know, uh, essentially all of 24. So this was September to September of 23 to September 24. That's what I was doing. And then as we moved into the fall, I noticed that I had excessive bloating upon eating anything.
And if I'm not mistaken, that entire year, we were also dealing with,
Yes, thank you for remembering that, please.
we were
That
also dealing with the struggling with the Kangen,
the water
the
situation.
water situation that we had going on.
Hmm.
And
It was somewhere in there we switched to back to bottled water because we were at a loss as to how to find the cleanest. And of
that's
course,
right,
we were used to the alkalinity of 9.5.
right,
And so we didn't really want to go back to 7 because I felt like it was really supporting my detox efforts to
right.
stay
And the truth of
healthy.
that is that most bottled water, this is part of what I learned in my journey with the health.
Hmm.
Part of the issue with most bottled water on the whole is not regulated, and none of it is is a neutral even, much less a higher alkalinity. And those that are higher alkalinity, they use uh, mostly baking soda to make it higher alkalinity. And I knew from my time with using the Kangen that the higher alkalinity wasn't really even the whole reason for me to use the Kangen. It had to do with the smaller molecular size, and no bottled water will
Right.
ever have that.
And think about bottled water. It sits around in factories and in trucks and on grocery store shelves for a
Well,
super long time, which now makes it dead or stagnant.
and
So,
even worse, those kinds of those bottles that are made with what they call blow mold. They make them hot, and then they put the water in it while it's still hot so that it will keep its shape, which means now it cannot actually even be sold by law
yeah, so the
for
water is
several weeks.
actually just cooling the plastic
Right. And so
and
it's
being infused with it. So it's loaded with the microplastics.
right.
Yeah.
So there's lots of reasons that I learned why I'm not a fan of bottled water. But we did find, that was when I found the highest alkalinity on the market that was not uh, using baking soda was that eternal water.
Yeah.
Highly
Hmm.
interesting that they chose that name for, because it was a superior water. But yes, we were using that water
Hmm.
while we were trying to assess what we could do about the Kangen,
Right.
because then we
And
just
we did
learned,
try a few things and it was a process for sure.
yes,
Um, but so just to pick up my story again, I don't want to get too lost in so many details because there are so
right,
many.
exactly.
To move the timeline along, I'm noticing in the fall of 24, that I have a bloating I just can't cope with. I can't eat without feeling excessive bloating. And so I'm having trouble getting the nutrients I know I need in my body without distress. So I'm battling with this, not knowing how to resolve it for, I guess, 4 months. So from September, October, November, December, yeah, I was getting worse. So the inability to digest was growing. And then by January, so I would say around Christmas time, I began to have, or just prior to, so for about 4 weeks, I would say, because I'm trying to put a timeline on it, how long I felt really bad. And it kind of snuck up on me because I think I just got accustomed. It was started with the bloating, and I just kind of got accustomed to it and I acclimated to it a little. And I just sort started to change my diet and my eating habits to cope with it. Never really getting to the root of it or discovering what was happening. I just sort of acclimated. And I also noticed, and I feel called to bring this up, and I know this is a side note, but I feel like it's an important piece for my journey as to how I discovered and learned what, and I want to say observed within myself that is very important because it had a huge takeaway for me, which is I allowed myself to have a judgment, I'll say, about reaching out for help. So I had an opinion about the medical institution. I had an opinion about naturopathic medicine even, and I'll share those opinions. So the allopathic route felt like a disaster, and I was watching people who were embarking upon that since 2014, like go that route. And I observed that they entered in one state of physical being and they exited oftentimes in a coffin. And that concerned me greatly about, let's just say the ability to really do a thing didn't seem to be in that system. I was losing trust in it. I had prior to trust in that system, and I observed that I was literally giving my power to that system to manage my health. And several years prior to this circumstance, I had taken back that power. And so when I'm now feeling very poorly, I did not for a moment really want to utilize allopathic medicine. And not only that, but I had judged it as a death sentence, and under no circumstances did I want to participate in that at all. And I was catching myself judging people that were still doing that. And I don't I don't really know why, but uh I mean I can't say what the trigger point was, but so at some point during this crisis for me, like I'm not feeling well, I know I need help. Okay, and so let's get to the opinion I had on naturopathics. And that opinion was, I cannot afford that. And so that left me stuck between a rock and a hard place, because there was something I absolutely would not do. And then there was something that I would do but couldn't afford. And so I did nothing other than, continue to sort of avoid triggers, if you will. So again, that was more of me like treating the symptom, if you will, instead of getting to the root, because on my own, I wasn't able to get to the root of it. For whatever reason, I never discovered what was the root cause of my distress, and so it never got addressed. So I would say the bloating got out of control, that I began to notice a difficulty drawing a breath. First, I felt that, experienced that, only while I had a full belly that of food I could not digest. And so I was eating less and less. And pretty soon my appetite turned off completely. Like I had no desire to even eat anymore because I felt the best with minimal food. Now, I also knew that I needed nutrition, so I was, doing things like the aminos because I felt good taking them. I didn't have to digest anything, and it went right into my bloodstream. Within 20 minutes, I felt strong and nourished, right? So I was relying on those things and then drinking shakes, mostly things that, I knew had some oomph to them. And then I started making sure that every bite counted, and I was, eating the things I knew needed to be included in my diet, and kind of having a once a day meal of as much of those things as I could tolerate. So, but watching myself judge people for going to get help allopathically, um, all of a sudden one day I thought to myself, am I attracting a situation to myself that I don't want to because of my focus? Because I realized I was focusing a lot of attention on that. And it was mainly because I wasn't feeling well and I wasn't doing anything about it. And instead of doing something about it, like really facing my situation, I was externalizing my focus, and then I was in resistance to what I was witnessing others doing. And it's like one day I just woke up to that. I caught myself doing that, and I knew that that was a recipe for disaster. And so the moment that I stopped doing that, and what I mean by stop doing that was I was still seeing the same behavior, but I stopped judging it and I began to observe it. And that took me out of sort of an energetic tether to that reality. And I started to feel better, not physically, but like the panic, the emotional, whatever I was feeling started to subside. And then I was like, I'm going to be okay. And I really took that focus and I went within and I said, okay, body, you're going to have to show me how to walk through this because I don't know how to do it. And I had to let go of my opinions that I previously held. And the two specifically in this situation were that allopathic is the devil and that I couldn't afford, the godly path or, the divine uh, way of healing. And so both of those points of view kept me from my own health. So really, it took a lot. I was working on that full time within me. And you might remember that, Sheila, because I know I spoke about it to,
No, I know. I remember
it
quite
helped
vividly,
me
actually.
to keep it up front.
Hmm.
I think I spoke about it in my book study. Like I was really working through it. And um I got to a place where because my husband kept saying, you need to go to the doctor, you need to go to the doctor. And I caught myself getting angry at him in the beginning time, like when the bloating first started, and he noticed I wasn't eating, he grew concerned and he would say, you need to see a doctor. And I would get angry. And I didn't yell and shout at him, but I just felt, oh, that's the last thing I ever do. You obviously don't know me very well. I was doing that inside of me. And one day I like just noticed that and went, now what is that about? And what are we really creating right there? So I had to actively just work on not being triggered by the thought, right? Of going to a doctor. Um, so I had to release the thought that everything or anything could be totally negative without any redeeming qualities. And so, and that nothing was so perfect that it had no flaws. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
choosing a balanced perspective.
right.
And it was like I was swinging back and forth, and I had to like let that sort of come to a just didn't don't have be neutral, don't have a charge, and then choose the charge, choose how I want to see what I'm seeing. So that took a lot of work. Well, during that time of sort of doing the inner work on my thinking and how I'm perceiving and judging things that were happening, I'm tuning into my body and I'm asking it to show me what I need to see. And so I began to like go revert back to some early day stuff where I'm observing my body, what's happening, what can I learn from that? I just went real fundamental with it. And I observed because I was bypassing again with all this thinking and all this judging and everything I was doing in the mind realm. Um, I was missing body clues that were there probably all along, right? But I was missing them because I was focused elsewhere. So I brought my focus back in to my body, and I noticed that I was having difficulty breathing. And at first, it revealed itself, I'll say, after a meal, but in my focus to stay focused within my body, I began to realize that actually I was having a great bit of difficulty breathing, but I wasn't acknowledging that because I was lost in the sauce. And so the more I acknowledged that, the more I noticed fatigue, general fatigue, at some, doing things around the house or shopping, things that we had been doing for all the years I was here that wasn't having this profound of effect. Yes, we'd feel exhausted, being out in the world was exhausting, right?
Right,
Just energetically for both of us at that time. But
right.
this was different. I couldn't endure that and I was curtailing my activity. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm acclimating to I can't do this or that anymore. And I stopped doing this or that. And then I started to notice that just walking from room to room within the house, I could not breathe. And then I noticed I could not lay down and breathe. And all the while I'm asking, should I be going to the hospital? Because I didn't have insurance or a primary care physician to check in that manner. And I didn't have enough symptoms to like go to the hospital and, because the hospital isn't a place to figure out, sort of how to improve your health. It's really there for crisis management. And I knew that. And I wasn't at a crisis position where that type of a visit could help me. Um, so I tuned into my body and my body said, I'll let you know when it's time for that. And so then I was like, okay, so that might have a place in my reality. And I let myself be comforted by that there's help and I can receive it. So, I worked on that for a little bit, just feeling relief that I could be helped and that allopathic medicine is not the devil and it's full of beautiful people and and I'm going to say earth angels because I feel to label a person who is uh, allowing their soul to do what it came here to do, which is to love all of us and to be of service to one another. Um, that's what God is doing here. And so when you are aligned with your spirit and you allow your spirit to flow through you as you, then, you are the divine embodied in that moment. And so I began to trust that God is everywhere and God is in the hospital and that there will be help. And so I'm gonna say I began to get concerned about myself somewhere around Christmas time because it was getting harder and harder to lay down, and I was getting less and less sleep. Prior to this, I was sleeping 12 to 14 hours a day. Like I needed that much sleep to function. And that was just to walk around the house anymore because I remember I started ordering groceries in because I couldn't endure.
No, I remember quite clearly that you
Yeah,
were, I would find you up in your chair, sitting straight up.
yeah, because I couldn't
Yeah,
lay down.
yeah.
Um, and I'd ask, do I need to go to the hospital? And I got a no, you're okay. Just relax. And I would get, do this, do that, little instructions that would make me feel comfortable. And so that's what I did. And then one night, so now this was, I'm going to move us down the timeline to January 4th. I had gone to bed. Now, this was maybe a week's worth of having to get up in the middle of the night, so I'm sleeping less and less, right?
Right.
So my 10 hours just kind of backed up very slowly. And at this point now, I'm lucky to get 4 hours. And I'm getting concerned because I sleep a lot in general. I've been a sleeper from way back. I enjoy my sleep. I feel best with a little more sleep than the average person, maybe. And so the fact that I'm getting 6 hours is concerning me because I never feel rejuvenated. It's not a good sleep. It's not long enough. And so I feel like I'm starting my day already in a deficit of I don't feel refreshed. Okay, well, then it moved to 4 hours. And pretty soon now, by the fourth, I 2 hours was all I could tolerate of lying down. And I woke up in a panic, kind of like I felt like I was drowning. And so I had to sit up, and it took a moment after getting, upright just in the bed to catch my breath enough to feel like I could leave the bed, right? To get to my easy chair where I could and I was doing this thing where I was now propping up pillows on my lap to put my arms upon because if I did like that, I felt like I could breathe. And that was a comfortable position where I could then lay my head down on my hands and close my eyes, get some sense of comfort. No real deep sleep or anything, but some relaxation, right? And during that time, I said to my body, okay, so, is this the time? And I remember, so I got to go back. Maybe 2 or 3 days before this, I had said, what is happening to my body? Why is this happening? Like, I really needed to know what is happening. And I was standing at the sink. I recall that I was washing dishes and having a conversation with myself. And so this is often how conversations with myself go. Memories will come to me, and then sometimes dialogue, even like words. And I'll say, "Oh, really? But what about?" And I can have a dialogue back and forth, but not always. Sometimes it's just feelings, memories, a picture, something will come to me. And so I asked what's going on, right? And what I got was that so I saw a picture of me. I don't have a lot of memories from this time in my life. I was maybe 4 or 5. I'm not really sure. Um, but it's a photograph that my father had taken and had in his possession that I saw one day. And that picture was shown to me like it came. And I was like, okay. So there's little me, toddler me, and then next was like a whole thing that something had happened that I don't remember, and that's why I don't remember lots of my childhood, because that's how I coped. I forgot things, and that something had happened that I sort of buried, that I let go of, and that I had a panic with it, that I knew I was to love unconditionally. Like that's why I came here, to love everything and everyone. And in that moment, I doubted that I could do that, that I had the ability to, because of things that were happening in my life, and that I didn't think I had the ability to love unconditionally, and that I was feeling anger and all kinds of emotions that felt toxic to me. And so I built, then next I was shown like a, almost like a dream catcher, but it was a sphere of like gnarly, it looked like branches. And then there was like, and I say dream catcher because it was like thread that was woven, kind of like a spider web, all around my heart. And I was shown that it was revealed like a dream catcher because of what a dream catcher does. I was told that a dream catcher you hang over your bed, and that the dreams get filtered through the dream catcher, and it catches the negative dreams and holds it so that you can have positive dreams. So essentially, what I had done was, and then I heard the word lattice, that I built a lattice around my heart to protect it, and that it was permeable. uh, uh, Um, so it caught the negativity in the webbing, and it only allowed then, so it stripped the event of the negative sticky substance, and then only the unconditional love flowed through to reach my heart. And then I was free then to love unconditionally, and unconditional love could pass through this protective lattice, for lack of any other way to describe this. Um, and it came with a download of energy that just kept giving me body rushes. Like I knew it was the truth. I felt like it was flashbacks of my reality. There was so much more to what I'm describing here. And this is why I've been able to piece together this story for myself. And I'm putting it into words for you. And I hope that I'm choosing words that are helping to describe the experience, because that's very difficult for me. But so I was told that I had reached a frequency in my life through my practices that this lattice could dissolve, that it wasn't required anymore, because also it was inhibiting natural responses. It was not in my highest good any longer. We'll just put it that way. And I saw it begin to dissolve. It was leaving because it's not necessary. Okay, so I had that on board, and I realized that it was sort of a spiritual event for me, one that was created in my subtle body that now was made manifest in my physical body as an experience to walk through. So I accepted that. And I also at that time said to myself, well, I'm ready and willing to go to the hospital if that is required. And if it isn't, I'm happy to get on with my healing. And I spent a couple of days forgiving myself, forgiving all that I guess I felt who are um gressing, like why I forgave those that helped, gave me the idea to create the lattice. I thanked the lattice for serving me. I just sort of had a full moment with forgiveness. and acceptance. I was now going to allow whatever experience needed to happen for me, for my good, and for my shedding. Like I knew that there were concepts and things, because like I said, I brought up two of them. There were things I now was ready to release that were silently in the background, helping me create my reality. And I didn't need them anymore. And I needed a fresh start. Like I was ready for one, and it was time for one. And this physical experience was a part of that process for me. So and that took us several days. So maybe that was, 3, 4 days. And then I woke up with the 2 hour window of sleep and I knew that, this wasn't good. Especially when during that wake up, it was like I woke up from a dream that I was still in. I was dreaming that I was in like a hospital setting, and that I was just sort of listening to and observing, like my eyes were closed in this setting, in this dream, and that people were attending to me.
Now,
And
if you don't mind my stopping you
yes,
here for a moment, because
yes, please,
there's
because this
been
is a big
several,
part of the story right here.
well, yes, and there's been several times even prior to this, like I want to go back to the original detox that you had a year previous to that.
Right.
You also had an experience then, spiritually or
Yes.
etherically, let's say, where
Uh,
you were being attended and your team, your spirit team, actually said to you that you were undergoing psychic surgery then
yes.
during that
Yes.
detoxing time. That was actually part of
Thank you.
what you experienced. I recall you sharing that with me at the time.
Yes.
And so
I'm
this is, and I wanted to bring it forward because,
so glad you did.
well, because of the way that you and I have worked together in these last
Mhm.
9 years, it
Yes.
it seems, and I wanted to make this very clear to anyone that's listening to this. This is I feel it's because of our whatever it is that we came together to do. A lot of that has to do with what you said the last time we were together. There's something about the two of us being as comfortable with each other as we have become to be
Yep.
able to put these things out on the table for observation, view, discussion, that sort of thing, without people thinking you're crazy, without having to
Right.
worry about what somebody else is going to think of.
Feel like you have to protect yourself in any way like that.
Right.
And you could see why that was important, particularly for me.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Especially to
With what
see,
I have going on
right.
here. And we didn't know any of that when we came together.
No, we certainly didn't. But
So,
but
yeah,
then to
good point.
discover this, and that's
Mhm.
why I wanted to make sure and bring it all forward because
Yeah, thank
this
you
is
for that.
something that has been ongoing for both of
Yes,
us actually. And I also recalled as you were telling, especially the piling up of the pillows.
yes,
And I believe that if everyone on the planet feels into this for a moment, you will also recall it feels to me like there has been a compression
yes.
of
That
things.
is, yes,
And
yes.
so in the 3D realm as well. And so there's a mixture here of all of that, bringing it to the fore, if you will. Because I mean,
Yes.
even while you were moving through that at that time,
Hmm.
I started not being able to breathe as easily,
Yes,
and that just got progressively worse. So I
right.
just wanted to bring that forward about the psychic surgery that you
Yes,
were
thank you
told you
for
were
that. Because I
undergoing.
do, I do
Even,
want to speak to that for a second.
yeah, please do.
Okay. So that is an important piece to this. And really, it will set the stage for what happens in the hospital, honestly.
Right.
So because of, I'm going to say, my tuning in and my working with my body, um, I learned about the subtle body and how it's the pre-matter template. I think I spoke, about this a bit in our last video. And the importance of that for me is this. In dream time, I am very busy um, working with that template. Like I am that template. And I have had many dreams throughout the years since I started this observation bit and really getting in tune with my body and working with it. I have gone in dream time to work with my body for years and years and years. And I had been told, again, I ask questions and I receive answers. So that's what I mean by I've been told.
Right.
I've discovered through observation, let's say, that in dream time, certain particular things happen with the pre-matter template that then filters down into, okay, so like I would wake up with marks on my body and it looked like IV hematomas, if you will,
Right.
and things like that. So over the years, I had been, receiving visions and data and sometimes just woke up with it that I was in a psychic surgery, meaning my subtle body was being worked with consciously by, my greater being and also the future aspects of myself. So all parts of me are in on this and working together for my good. And so I have had many experiences where I woke up in the middle of that and then it felt so real. And I would look down at my body and see the hematoma and I would feel like, wow, that's whatever happens in dream time, where it pertains to my subtle body,
Right.
it seems to happen. And then mom and I were tackling the My Big Toe from Tom Campbell book behind me. And he talks about Tom's playground for those who are familiar with his work. And he talks about a place he goes in his subtle body and and he's got a book about it. He wrote a little book about it.
He
And
wrote a
if you'd
big
like
book
to
about
read
it.
it, you can. Well, no, I mean just
Oh, that's right. The
the
one that,
smaller work that's just about Tom's
right.
playground. And as I'm looking at that map, I realize, well, I've been to this place because I've dreamed of it frequently, which is so interesting. And there is a clinic there. And in my dreams, I go there and I crawl into a crystal pod, if you will, and what it's referred to in my dream as my crystal rejuvenating pod or rejuvenation pod. And so I go there for rejuvenation. It resets my body template because my thoughts and my feelings add to it in a way that changes it from its perfect state. And so for a while, I would ask that before, as I'm drifting off to sleep, I would invite my body to go there, my subtle body, to go rejuvenate. And so sometimes then I would dream about being at this clinic. And so I think that there are places that we all go and we assist one another. And
Right.
that's just because of my experience in dream time. And you can decide how things work in your world.
Right.
I'm not trying to tell anybody how the universe works, but let's just say my experience of this universe has been that. And so this morning I felt as I woke on the 4th, because I want to stay on track here, I felt as though I were in the clinic from dream time. And I felt like I was maybe asleep there too, or just aware, but my eyes were closed. So my eyes were closed in my bed. I'm dreaming, but also in the dream, my eyes are closed and I'm in a bed and there's a lot of talk over me about me. And upon awakening, I had words that I could hear somebody saying to me, and that was, there is a collapse of the left, and then I woke. And because I had been feeling this difficulty in breathing, it's like my mind filled in the blank. And I said, lung. And I was like, no wonder you can't breathe. And I said to myself, is this what a collapsed lung feels like? Like, have I somehow collapsed a lung? And that's what's going on. And so I kind of sat with that and I thought, yeah, because that could really be it. And so, anyway, that prompted me to ask, am I in a position to go to the hospital now? Do I need help? Have I reached the point where I actually need help? And I didn't get a yes or an affirmative that I recall. It was more the next urge that I had very strongly was to get dressed. Now, mind you, I haven't gotten dressed out of my sleeping clothes. I would just shower and change. Sleeping clothes.
Yeah,
I
that
was
went on
not
for
gonna,
several days. You just showered and got right back in your jammies.
yes, because I didn't want anything constricting
Right,
my middle. Because then I remember saying all the time, it's cutting me in half and I can't breathe. My
right,
clothing felt too constricting.
right,
Couldn't put a bra on. I felt like I couldn't expand my lungs.
right.
So, the fact that I wanted to get dressed was interesting. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to the hospital. So, I made it out to my easy chair and got my arms propped up so I could breathe and get my thinking clear because I was in a bit of a fog. Like I said, I woke up with a feeling of drowning and sort of panic. I probably looked like a fish trying to breathe, and gulping air and just panicking. So, after I got myself calmed and I tuned in again, is it time to go to the hospital? Um, I just got, because by now I knew I was going. Like there was no question in my mind, am I going? I was told to put my boots on because remember it was January. And so I did, and I hadn't woke anyone yet. It was maybe 3:45 in the morning. And I knew I was going, but I didn't feel like I needed to call an ambulance. I didn't get that kind of an urge, even though I probably could have. Like nobody would have held it against me if I did, but I was following my body's guidance and it was calmly walking me through the paces. So then about 5 a.m., I got the strong urge to wake Jasmine. So I did. And I told her, I've been monitoring some stats. I was monitoring my O2 and my blood pressure and my stats, and I was concerned by what I saw. And so I woke her and I told her of my stats. And she immediately got on the phone with her best friend, her college roommate, who is a paramedic. And they triaged me together. And she said, okay, if the numbers get between, this number and this number, or lower than this number here, then call an ambulance. If it's between this number and this number, drive her to the hospital. And so I was between this number and this number. And so luckily it hadn't dropped to the point where an ambulance would be required. So that's what we did. Then Jasmine awoke my husband and we began the process of going to the hospital. And the three of us went to the ER together. And when I got there, I had a sense of feeling better. Like I almost felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here. because like I could feel better. And I think that was relief because of the fact that I had made the decision and I was at peace with it to get the help, that my body just sort of relaxed and I didn't feel like I was struggling. Of course, they wheeled me in a wheelchair. So, I was breathing all right. I felt comfortable. And I listed off basically my reasons for being there, what my symptomology was and what it had been and all of that. And like I went straight from the front desk to the triage room, which that had never happened before in an ER experience that I had ever had. Not that I had had many, but usually, and I'd like taken my husband when he had what I thought was a very severe situation, and they had us sitting in the waiting area for a few minutes. So I was waiting for that, and when it didn't happen, I was kind of surprised. And then quite a team assembled very quickly, and there was a lot of commotion and like people, like several things happening at once instead of, well, we're going to do this. And then, you know, s- people leave and you do a lot of waiting. I've been in this particular scenario before where you're, in an urgent situation, but nobody seems to be running around urgently. And I was feeling calm because I was at the hospital and I trusted that all was in hand and that everything that needed to happen would. And everybody was jumping and hopping around, and 10 things were happening simultaneously. I had three people asking me questions all at the same time. And I was like, ooh, the hubbub, what, calm down, everybody. I'm all right. Um, and so very quickly, and there weren't rooms. So, due to flu season and what all, they had set up temporary, like little, um, cubicles maybe because they had these like dividers that they had put up between beds, and the beds were just lining the halls. And so I was in that situation after they got the IV in and ordered a whole bunch of things to happen. And I gave my blood sample and my urine sample, and then I was parked along the wall. And I wasn't parked there for very long before a team came with a little device and they hooked it up and they were reading my heart with a sonogram. And I was told at that juncture that my left ventricle had about 24 hours before collapse, and that's the kind of heart attack you could say that no one survives, because that's exactly what he said to me. And I was like, oh, okay. He said that's a cardiac event that no one can survive. And so then I was like, wow, okay. So this is more serious than what I was aware of
Right.
at all. Um, So I was, and they said, so we've admitted you, we're waiting for a room, but in the meantime, we need to perform some tests. And so from that hallway, like maybe I stayed there for 10 or 15 minutes while I was waiting for someone to come and take my bed and wheel me off for a test. And then I'd be returned to the hallway where Jasmine was still sitting with my purse. And maybe 5 or 10 minutes would lapse and the next person came and delivered me to the next test. And so and then I got a CAT scan, and that started all of a sudden this terrible anxiety. The moment the contrast dye hit my veins, my body went into total panic and overwhelm. Now, remember, I had been feeling super calm, like just this calm had overtaken me. And I was, making jokes and feeling good and no pain relief or anything. It was just like the relief of finally having eyeballs on this and the beautiful people I was surrounded by. I trusted that God was moving through them, that source, my soul, however you want to hold the
Right.
greater portion of us, that is the eternal. I felt like I was in good hands and I felt super safe. And I was just very relaxed. And even that muse did not stun me. I saw the perfection of the timing. Um, and everything that happened felt so accorded. Every person I met and interacted with felt super accorded, like codes were exchanged, meaning I was getting benefit from just having their field in mind, and they were also benefiting from meeting me, and being in my field. And so it just felt really magical to me, and I was in resistance to none of it. And it was just, I really, during that portion of this whole thing, I saw it as magical and I was excited to participate. I know that's going to sound strange, but like I felt like it had greater meaning on so many levels that I just felt honored to participate. And I know that sounds very strange, but that was truly my experience of it. Um, so when I got the anxiety, that felt different. That took me to a different place. And that felt more life or death than I had felt all the way up leading up to this. Like I thought I wasn't going to make it out of the CAT scan, because I instantly began to cough and choke. And and I warned them, lying down is what brings on my breathlessness. And so I'm concerned about lying here for any amount of time, because by this point I know I cannot lay down. Like
Right.
I've I've moved past the point of being able to lie down at all. I knew this. And so the heaviness, the anvil on my chest, the anxiety, and now the coughing, 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 coughing. And I felt like I couldn't draw a deep enough breath to cough properly. And so I kind of felt like I was drowning in the cough, if that makes any sense. Um, and and then they were asking me to hold my breath for this test. Like, I don't know how they got a CAT scan, like how I was feeling, and the fact that I couldn't hold still and that I felt like I was dying, this whole thing. I don't know how I made it through the CAT scan. And then the whole rest of my hospital stay, for 2 weeks, I remember counting, and that was like 14 or 15 days of this coughing that I just could not shake after that. I didn't come in with a cough, and I didn't feel like virally sick at all, as far as I never felt like, oh, I'm coming down with something.
Right.
But I did notice when I lied down to sleep, I would get feverish, like sweat, crazy, and just feel clammy and yicky to myself. But I didn't feel as though I was presenting with a virus or an illness of any kind. And then once they told me about the heart situation, then I felt like, yeah, that's what's going on here. So the coughing I could never figure out, and I kept saying, I'm very concerned about this cough. I don't understand it. I did not have it before. And I know everybody that came to see me after that said, so you've had a virus and this is, and I was like, no, I really haven't. And I couldn't get anyone to believe that, because this coughing, I couldn't speak without it causing this terrible cough. And it came with a weakness, like I was having a hard time getting to and from the bathroom, getting up from the toilet was difficult, and I wasn't feeling that way at home. It wasn't until after that CAT scan. So I really kind of knew something was off about the CAT scan.
Right.
Um, so I'll just leave that story there for now. And then by the time I got to a room, so then they, brought me back, and I was waiting in the hallway for a little bit longer. And then somebody came to me and said, your room is ready. We have a procedure in the morning to deal with what now is diagnosed as pericarditis. In the morning, we're going to be inserting um, um, I guess a tube, a catheter, I don't know, something in the sac around the heart to drain it, and then we'll go from there. Like that, like we had a plan, and that's what we were going to do. And so, you know, um, by the time I got to the room, I think the day was gone really, and it was evening time. And so they said at 7 a.m., you're on the books for your procedure. And so overnight in that room was just kind of about being comfortable and staying calm for the procedure. And I had some very bizarre experiences. I was told, I was offered um, Tylenol and ibuprofen, and I refused either of them because I've had experiences with them in the past that I felt like my body didn't like them and it wasn't good for me. And I explained that, I was consuming quite a lot of that um, for most of my life. And for the past 14 years, I had stopped that. And I feel better not having that. And they wanted to know what my symptoms were. And so I said that it caused kidney pains, which it did. I had a lot of kidney pains and I would get a lot of kidney infections back then. And also at this point, I was saying too that I felt almost anxious when I took it. And that could be because my body wanted me to stop and
Right.
it was getting worse and worse. So I don't and I couldn't recall why I took myself off of it, but I knew that once I did, I felt better. And I thought I'm in a sensitive situation and I didn't want to pile on. I didn't want to find out what it would do to me. But I just knew it wasn't for me. And so I didn't really have anything as far as pharmaceuticals. They offered great many things that I turned down, like different shots and stuff they wanted me to have. And so I would ask, what is that for? And I was like, well, so why would we be doing that? And then they said, well, because we do that for everybody who comes in. And I thought, well, I already feel overwhelmed and I don't want to overwhelm my system any longer. So, I'm respectfully going to decline your offer on that. And so I sort of spent the night just relaxing myself into the new environment and trying to sleep. And of course, because of the bed, I could sleep sitting up. And so I did get cat naps here and there in between things that were, of course, going on at the hospital. And it seemed that every time I closed my eyes, I would go right into dream time, is how it felt to me. And I'm sure part of it was my body was in shock. I was sort of in and out of this reality, and I was kind of simultaneously in dream time. Like I was in a different dimension and shifting between them sort of regularly. And so it seemed that when I closed my eyes, so it would be like I dreamt that I was just sitting up with my eyes open, and part of me knew that I wasn't, that I was like resting and that nobody was in the room. So that's what I mean by it was just kind of a weird space that I was in. And a nurse or something would come in, an aide, somebody in some scrubs, and they kind of looked, I gave them the name of clowns because they looked almost like a caricature of the person that um, because it would be like features would be slightly exaggerated, like big eyes to look like a puppy dog, or to be very sweet, or to convey messages like they were caricaturish. um, to look a particular way, like inviting, sweet, innocent, very kindly. And they were inviting me to leave my bed and to come with them. They were going to take me somewhere. And I got out into the hallway and I saw a parade, and it was of patients and like what appeared to be, people in scrubs will say that, who were leading them down the hallway and out a door at the end of a very long hallway. And it was like a procession around the nursing station. And it was like I asked myself, my greater being, what is happening right now? And I got um this it was like a lucid dream. I got, this is a astral event, this parade. And I said, oh, and I was like, yeah. And I had the sense then of all these people I was looking at were actually lying in beds. And when I looked back at my room, I knew I couldn't see myself because I could only just see the door to my room. I had ventured out with these people. And I knew my body was there. I felt a connection to it. And I said, oh, we don't have to go with these people. And my greater being said, no, please don't. And I went, okay. And so I stepped out of line and I was now watching them proceed in front of me. And it was like each person had a couple of beings dressed in scrubs who were leading the way and almost cheerfully. And like, this is a very exciting moment with great glee. And that's why I said clowns, because they were skipping and singing, and it was a circusy sort of atmosphere. And also as a child, I was terrified of clowns, so it had that sense of danger also mixed in, where you're just like, oh, what is that?
Yeah, no,
And
I feel exactly what you're saying because I
feeling
have
to
the
it.
same experience.
Um, yeah, so I was just like, whoa. So I was watching them, and so something made me just say, you don't have to go with these people. You can stay with your bodies. This is optional. You don't have to leave here. And I just kept warning people that were praying, like I was standing now in my doorway, sort of sounding the alarm. Okay, and then a nurse came in and I opened my eyes, and she was real, because when I got back to my body, I'll say, but it felt like I was going back into my bed in the dream. I opened my eyes and I could not see the processional. Like there was no such thing. And I was like, oh, that was such a weird dream. And then anytime I closed my eyes, those clowns would be in my room trying to entice me out again. And so I was like, oh, this is so weird. And I'd open my eyes and I'd be alone. So at one point, a nurse came in and I felt to warn her. And I said, I don't know if you sense anything strange. Like, are you aware of the parade that is in the hallway? I don't even know why I said it. But this nurse in particular looked at me like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know. I just feel like there's a parade in the hallway. And then she said, yes, I've heard that before. And I thought, oh, how interesting. And then I just kind of let it drop. And so I had a lot of experiences like that where weird things would happen and I would say something to somebody. And then later I'd think, why did I say that? That's so crazy. Don't say that. But it was like in the moment I couldn't stop myself. So um and in hindsight now, I realize that there were some people I could speak to openly and some people who I couldn't. And luckily, I think after navigating it and coming out the other end, I can see the divine hand in all of it. And so I don't question any of that anymore. But while it was happening, I surely did. And then I had the procedure. I 7 o'clock rolled. Well, by I want to say four, they were prepping me and they were doing all kinds of things. So I didn't really sleep, but I would close my eyes and rest and relax until the circus showed up, and then I'd open my eyes because I didn't want to mess with the circus. And then 7 o'clock came, and I think I left my room like maybe 6 o'clock or 6:15, and they wanted me awake, so they just numbed the area with shots, 5 shots, and talked to me the entire time that they were doing the procedure, which was quite an interesting affair. And I remember just how I coped with it was I had a sense of um, being pure unconditional love. I don't know how to describe it, but I kept the unconditional love as my state of being. And I was in great appreciation for everything that was happening and for everyone. So like when I was lying in bed waiting for the procedure, I made sure to fill the OR with white light and pure love so that the stage was set and we'd all walk into that and swim into that. And then I would call forth the team that would be there, in spirit. And I thanked them and sent them gratitude and supportive energy so that they had a good night's rest and that they felt, you know, fabulous. And thanked them ahead of time for their good work and that I appreciated them and like that. And also, it was just shown to me that there's a piece I forgot to say earlier about pericarditis. So pericarditis is when water fills the sac surrounding the heart. And so I had a good deal of water around my heart. And when they were showing me, because they turned the machine so that I could see it, and they were explaining the situation that I was in, immediately I saw the lattice around my heart, and I was like, oh, it was a wall of ice. And the ice was melting. So that also like reinforced that my body did indeed know what was happening. Because ice melting can look also like a dissolving because it's moving from one state into another.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting little metaphor for me that I needed to share, and so that you might, if you aren't familiar with pericarditis, understand what the procedure was about.
Right.
So the procedure was about inserting a tube to drain the excess water. And so they recovered 400 cc's of fluid. So basically, they sent me back to the room after drawing off as much as they felt that they safely could in the OR. Then the tube was still in me when I went back to my room. And so during this time now of recovery and the finishing of the draining, my anesthesia here, which was shots, so I wasn't taking anything, through my breath, and I was consciously awake and aware. Started to wear off. I had a lot of physical pain. And of course, I had been refusing. I still did not want to add complications and take the pain meds. So I didn't get anything, like there was no morphine or any other, that's the only, I guess, drug I know for pain, but because I had some of that with my C-section. And that was highly effective in pain removal, but none of that was offered. So I just had a lot of pain. So as the pain racked my body, and I say racked because maybe 6 hours later, the draining had kind of slowed down, and by now it seemed like it all had wore off, but it really hadn't. It was just starting to wear off, because I still had the drain in me and everything. My body began to shake and rack. Like I just couldn't, every muscle was doing this in my body. And it gave me a sense of panic. So I was doing all that I can at this juncture to calm myself and to relax my body. And as I'm meditating and relaxing, like consciously, excuse me, asking my body to relax into the experience and just to notice and allow instead of, it felt like a resisting. I don't know, that's what it felt like my body was terrified and convulsing. So I was actively interacting with it and calming it, and I would drift off asleep, and it wasn't really asleep at all because the racking wouldn't allow me to forget that I was in my body in this hospital bed. But also a part of me left the building, and I was introduced to a guide named George and another guide who um, didn't have like a body that I saw, but was more like a bright light. And this guide called herself Baby Jessica, which made me laugh. And I just said, okay, nice to meet you, Baby Jessica. And I knew George before. I had been introduced to George in my meditations previously. And but this was the first time I saw him, and he kind of looked like, Farmer Brown. He had on like a farmer's jean overalls, and like he was out working the land and just came in. So I thought that was funny. He was very humorous, and he was a lot of fun. And they talked to me about my lattice. And it was very interesting. It was quite fascinating. And it was a huge download that when they were talking, I understood it fully. I could not bring back all of that data fully. Like I have parts and pieces of it. And since that night, it has unpacked even more. So basically, they showed me how the lattice was formed, and it was in response to, like I said, physical situations in my life, and that I was keeping it in place, and it was taking a lot of my energy to do so. And it was like all my energy ran through this lattice. And then they showed me a blue flame lattice. So I say flame because it was like if you've ever seen a pilot light on a gas stove, it's a blue flame. And it's almost, it doesn't look like a flame, like an orange flame licks, and it's like a steady beam,
Right.
but it's also alive, and you know that it's flame. Okay, so that's what this energy looked like. It was energy,
Right.
and it forms the lattice of our organic natural reality. Like that's, if you take everything down to its essential element, it is that blue flame. And so the lattice that I was running off of was draining me physically. It was killing my body to do that anymore. And that what I needed to do, what was required now, was to withdraw my energy from that lattice, and that I had begun to do that when I stopped judging everything and I began to accept what was and to appreciate what was and to go neutral in my focus, if that makes any sense. And that now what I needed to do was to acknowledge the blue lattice. So the original template lattice of organic life itself and how it runs, and to become the blue flame, to run my energy through and with this lattice, this new lattice. And that it wasn't new, it's just new to me because I had withdrawn from it and created this other gnarly lattice. And that made my blue lattice finite. So my energy was finite. That if I ran my energy through and with the original lattice,
Right.
my energy would be infinite. I would have infinite energy and power, and that I could create without distortion. That this lattice I had built was distortion. And I was continuing to feed it with my energy. My focus and attention was feeding this thing, and it was draining me and my access to my original energetic. And so we did some things in that moment. Like I remember physically moving things with George and baby Jessica. And I don't recall exactly, I don't think I knew even then exactly, when I woke up, what were we doing? And I really wanted to remember, but it was like I couldn't bring that back. But in that other realm, I knew exactly what we were doing. And it was exciting to me because it made sense to me. And I was like, yes, yes, I get it. And give me more. Like it was a very exciting exchange. Um, in that I was shown that I will teach people or show them what I've learned on this topic, and that I will write a book about it. And I was shown the book. I was shown the effect that it had. I was shown all the people that would benefit from the event that I was having, because it would show people that they could do the very same and that they would. And I was also shown hospital personnel that would be greatly affected by their interactions with my case, and that there might be writings that this person does too. Like I was shown a timeline, an event where all of that did happen. Okay, but everybody has free will, and so
Right.
whether any of that, happens for that person or not, or whatever, I don't really know.
Right.
But I saw all these possibilities that excited me, lit me up inside. And so when I woke up, or, I came back to my body reality and still shaking and in pain, I had the comfort of all of that. That deliciousness came back with me to the extent where it helped me to cope with my physical situation. And I felt like I had a mission, like I felt renewed, and that I had survived this whole event, created it, survived it for this lesson. Like I was in resistance now at this point to none of it. And I was even excited for it because I was living through it. I didn't die. You know what I mean? I
Right.
was
Right.
here. I still had the opportunity to, take this newly found knowledge into my physical reality and really play with it. And that got me so excited just to contemplate that. And one more piece that I think we'll be able to share today, and then I think we have to cut this one off, unfortunately. But So I had the drain come out, and or I don't even think the drain was out yet, but at 4 in the morning, the day of the procedure. So I had the procedure at 7 a.m. But then, so it would have been the next day, 4 a.m. Um, the doctor who performed the procedure came to me and said, "Are you awake?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, I'd love to chat with you for a moment, if that's all right. And I said, yes. And he sat in the chair next to my bed. And I'll never forget his beautiful eyes, because that's pretty much all I could see and take in. He kind of had his chin resting on the bed rail there, and was talking to me. And I, had opened my eyes, and we were just sort of at eye level. And his eyes were so warm, and they were so inviting, and they were so familiar. And like I had no guard up or anything. And he asked me what ever possessed me to do what I did and come into the ER at the timing that I did, because he was fascinated by that. And then he asked me, kind of my story. And so I told him everything. And I told him all kinds of things that shocked me to tell him. Like, I don't know why I told him those things. And then later to see them written out in my chart was also sort of, ooh, what am I doing? But he said, okay, so wow, he was deeply affected by that. And he didn't offer me a lot. He sort of took it in. Um, and then he said, okay, well, that's really what I wanted to know. And he left, and I never saw him or spoke to him since then. So I just thought that was the most interesting little piece. That he came to me like that, in at 4 in the morning. And then the things I chose to tell him were also quite interesting. So yeah, and then, that was the first hospital stay. I was in the cardiac ICU for 7 days, or was it 8? Somewhere around there. Well, they got me stabilized, and then it was just all about figuring out how and why that happened. And that's a whole nother show, really.
Yeah, which I think we'll do a part three if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Because honestly,
Because
this
that was really
entire
just the
thing,
beginning of the
well,
ordeal.
and the the synchronicities, the 3D, 5D, 4D, all of those Ds all mixed up in
Working in unison.
that
Like,
experience is just phenomenal. And I know that your guidance shared with you in regards to the book, and as soon as you started receiving diagnoses, I knew that part of this entire thing has been um, and will be, because it's not over yet,
okay.
all about um, revealing and disclosure. And
Hmm.
uh, because your case in particular, as I know mine has already done so, as I have, papers written about me, the same will happen for you.
Yes.
And you may not ever know it, because the
Right.
only reason I found out was
Yeah, I
because
think
of my
that's why they showed me that.
that's right. And so,
Hmm.
because all of us have, we affect reality more deeply than we understand.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for sitting with me and telling
Yeah.
this today.
And I
Um,
want to say one more thing before we part ways,
yes,
before we
absolutely.
close this out for today. Um, please help me to remember this because something's coming in where I'd like to start, which is the actual conversation, the things I said to this doctor, because it
Yes.
will give you a clue as to where the paper might go. And
Yes.
that is important. And we just don't have the time right now. We're
Right.
actually late for another appointment.
Right. We are late for
So,
another appointment, and otherwise we would stop here and just continue on. But we
right.
will do that as soon as that other appointment is
Yes.
complete.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I just want to say
So
that.
that's right. So there will be absolutely there will be more of these actually with others as well, not just Lisa.
Yeah.
But we will be doing conscious perspectives on dis-ease and illness. There will be multiples of these. So if you're not already subscribed, I highly recommend that you do so in both places to include the notification bell if you ever want to catch any of these live where you will be able to ask questions
Participate. Yeah.
if you would like. And until we meet again, I hope you will move towards that which brings you joy in each moment that presents it to you. At the very least, move toward that which draws your attention because there's something there for you. Thank you again, Lisa.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting me share this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our listeners staying with us. Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Be well.
Till next time, much love.